Welcome everyone to this live webinar about track access charges. I am Marieke van Gompel, Editor-in-Chief of Railtech.com. Today and tomorrow we were supposed to come together in Riga for the Track Access Charges Summit, but unfortunately we had to postpone this event because of COVID-19. Nonetheless, we would like to share knowledge and go into discussion with you about this very important topic. Track access charges are an area of intense debate in the railway sector. Charges for the use of infrastructure have been necessary due to the separation of train operation and infrastructure. In spite of European regulation, there are still many different ways of interpretation of the track access charges in different European countries. Today we will speak about the history of track access charges, the implementation in different countries, and necessary improvements. As you can see, due to the coronavirus, we have an empty studio here today, but we have experts that are connected through a live video. Today's guests are Stefan Marcnik and Ivan Vidovic, both researchers at Graz University of Technology, and Justina Hodenko, head of Latvian Railway Charging Body. Welcome to you all to the studio. If you have questions for the speaker, you can already start sending them in through the chat, and we will answer them during while we're speaking. So, Stefan Marcnik, to start with you. As a researcher, you have been working on track access charges for quite a long time. And in the past, there were several EU directives to further shape these track access charges. To go back into history, why was European legislation necessary?
Yeah, so it started all with the vertical separation. So that means to split the upstream process and the infrastructure from the downstream process of railway operation, train operation, and therefore it was necessary to put in an interface also for this cost. And this was all to improve the competitiveness of railways in the intermodal competition.
And what do the latest European rules say about track access charges?
Yeah, looking back in history, we started with a directive in 1991 where very little about these track access charges were mentioned. Then with the first railway package in 2001, things changed, and currently we are, or the legal background is Directive 34 from 2012, which imposes the so-called direct cost charging, something that what was specified concerning the cost details, but was more or less in place already before. So that means the train run should be charged at least to the direct cost. It's more or less marginal costs or variable costs of a train run, of the operation of a train run. And this direct cost issue was also specified, or how to calculate this direct cost was specified in an implementation regulation from 2015, Regulation 909, which gives the framework how to calculate these costs.
And how far are the different European countries with implementing these rules?
They are implemented, more or less. So we have nowadays a scheme where we have direct cost for the one part for the train run, and which is the first possibility to also include something more than the direct costs. We have markups for different train categories that are calculated to what the market can bear. And this scheme is rolled out more or less in Europe already. We discussed already a lot of times. The basic principle, of course, is there, and it's from the legal background is also implemented in Europe, but there are still huge differences.
And can you give some examples of differences there are?
It starts already with the calculation of the direct cost, because the framework is there, and it's also mentioned what costs are not to be considered. But the implementation regulation does not give detailed cost positions that need to be considered. So we have a huge variety already on the direct cost side. And with the markups, it is completely different from country to country. When we have a look on the freight sector or long distance freight sector, international freight transportation, we come up with about similar charges. But in the passenger market, which is much more a national topic, we have a huge difference in the markups, especially in the markups, because this is also linked to the financing of the entire railway system from country to country. Are there PSOs? How high are they? Etc. etc. So in the end, it's about financing the railway sector, and this can be done by track access charges partly, but of course we have on the passenger market the PSOs, and on the infrastructure manager side as well, financial support directly to the infrastructure managers.
Mm-hmm. So then what improvements are there still to be met? Because you say there's many differences between different countries, so I guess there should be more harmonization.
Yes, of course, we are talking about harmonization, and that was the aim already of the last directive, to get harmonized or more harmonized track access charges. I would like to differ that a little bit, because the markup sector, that is different from country to country, because the market for the railways itself is different for the countries. So what I said before, for international railway freight, there is only one market, because this is an international market. So there we need harmonization. In the passenger market, that's of course different from country to country. So there is, from my eyes, no harmonization necessary. What is the most challenging issue is to come up with similar direct costs, because we cannot explain somebody else why the direct cost of the train operation on the infrastructure side should differ so much from country to country. We have some things that are different, of course, price levels or productions or possibilities, technology, how it is done, etc., etc. There are differences, but that might give a variety of, let's say, plus minus 20%, but not in hundreds percent. So I think the next step should be, again, detailing, especially the implementation regulation 909 from 2015, to make very clear which kinds of costs are to be considered, so that all the countries have a similar track access charge, and not only the framework that is linked to that, because the framework is implemented already.
So it's a task of European Commission to be more detailed in legislation.
If it is the goal to come up with more harmonized track access charges, that is the challenge. Of course, and this is whenever we talk about track access charging, and we doing that the fifth time now in this series in 2011. The track access charging topic is very much linked to how railways are financed in different countries, and harmonization of track access charge will always have room, as long as we have so many different schemes of financing the entire railway sector from country to country. And if this is really a topic of harmonization, I'm not sure about that.
Thank you. I see that a question has come in for you, Stefan. It's from Linda Yehe. I hope I pronounced this right. She asked, what about international passenger trains? Is there no harmonization needed? I guess that you already answered it a little bit, but what do you think?
I would answer it very clearly. Whenever you have international, then you're talking about an international market. So nobody can explain why an international train run, let's say from Vienna to Brussels, where we have an existing a night train, why there should be a different market from country to country. So the next question would be, why should there be a different markup from country to country? But this is linked also to the network itself, to the utilization of the network from country to country. If you have, for example, lots of freight trains in the night, you have a partner to challenge. And we have not only the intramodal, but also an intermodal competition on the railway network. But of course, when we talk about international transport, we also should talk about harmonization. It is done to a certain part via the one-stop shops, so it's not necessary to run through all the different network operators. But in terms of track access charge, there is still room for improvement, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If the audience has questions for Stefan, Stefan will come back at the end. We will have a discussion, and so save your questions also. Thank you. Let's go to the next speaker, Ivan, which is Ivan Vidovic, Research Associate at Graz University of Technology. And together with Stefan, you are responsible for the program of the Track Access Charges Summit. And that will be held. We have postponed it until the 14th and 15th of October, also in Riga. And can you give a short summary of the conference program?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Marike, for having me here. I would like to welcome all our listeners and friends. We met 4 very successful events in Vienna, Frankfurt, Bern, and 2 years ago in Amsterdam. I think we managed to set up a very interesting and strong program again for Riga. We divided the program in 5 sessions. Some of them are including sessions from the summit in Amsterdam. And the first session in day 1 will tackle requirements on track access charges and focusing on the competition with other means of transport. What can we learn from already established track access charges schemes from other transport modes? And maybe something we can learn about it, how can we improve track access charges for the railway sector? The second session of the first day will have a special focus on rail freight corridors. And here we'll be focusing on one-stop shops, especially with experience. What experience do railway undertakings have with one-stop shops? And where are the possibilities to improve? What are the hurdles and obstacles? And what is maybe necessary to improve in the next couple of years? Therefore, we will have experts from Australia, United States, and also Europe in this session. The second session of the one is called the concluding session of this day. And the next day, we will start with a session on the implementation of the Directive 34/2012 and the implementing Act on Direct Costs, which Stefan mentioned already. As we are in Riga, we will especially focus on the experience of the Eastern countries and their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And in the second last session, we will hear the latest developments on a very, very hot topic right now, the minimum access package,
Mm-hmm.
and the costs that are directly incurred by operating a train service, which is very interesting in such challenging times like we are facing now. And the conference will be completed with a session tackling the minimum access package. what costs are included, and how can we finance the rest. We will hear also a presentation in this session from that's the program of the TAC in October.
Thank you for the summary. You have been doing research yourself on conditioning monitoring and vehicle-track interaction. And how do you think that track access charges can contribute to a better performance of the railway industry?
Well, in Directive 2012-34, there is an article, Article 35, which postulates that infrastructure charging schemes shall encourage both railway undertakings and infra managers to minimize disruptions and to improve the performance of railways. Well, this is highly theoretical, but most of the European countries have some kind of a charging scheme and also included performing schemes where they shift money from infrastructure and train operators in case of any traffic disturbances which are linked to the cause. The payments might not be calculated, so these are sometimes penalty payments between the manager, and this is mainly for delays or unavailability of infrastructure or malfunctions of the infrastructure. Well, if the track deteriorates, this is due to train operation, we have to maintain it. This ends in an unavailability or a malfunction of the track, and we have to maintain the track. This leads to costs on the side of rail undertaking. Such costs can be cost of operational hindrances, and in some countries they are an integral part of track costs. And we need to consider them when we're talking about track costs. This topic will be covered also at the conference by my colleague Markus Leudert, and he will give insight into a topic: how can we use performance regimes to move to a system-conform decision approach, and as a planning tool for infra managers. This means how can we maintain our track with the lowest costs for the infrastructure managers and for the rail undertaking. But as the track deteriorates, this also closely linked, the duration is closely linked to rolling stock, to the condition of rolling stock, and of course to the quality of the rolling stock. Therefore, we need an approach which considers the quality and the condition of locomotives and wagons. Moving away from the gross tone approach to an engineering model enables us to use track-friendly vehicles, to lower the maintenance costs, which means our track and our infrastructure is more available, and we need to maintain it at times. Such approach was established 3 years ago in Switzerland, which is the Swiss wear factor, and currently there's another project ongoing.
The Swiss wear factor is a very advanced system of track access charges, right?
Yes, it is a very advanced one. It is an engineering approach where we use several parameters of vehicles and several parameters of the track, and it is a cost-by-cost principle. Track-friendly vehicles pay less money, very, let's just say, vehicles in a bad condition or with bad parameters pay more for the track. Right now, this approach is one part of this approach is one thing we can consider. Another one is right now ongoing in the Shift to Rail project called Next Year, where we try to develop next generation concepts, methods, and solutions for running gear, which means the creation of track and a very good rolling stock leads to a lower life cycle cost for both infrastructures and rolling stock. Mr. Carlos Casanova from the KTH, Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, will give us a presentation at the conference about this topic also.
Wow, that really sounds interesting. There also will be a presentation of the European Agency for Railways about RINF. This is a database for the railway infrastructure of the European Union. Can you explain what is this database, why is it needed, and what are the advantages of it?
As I said, it is a database, and this database contains a variety of parameters for specific lines, track sections, and of course operational points. So one could ask, why do we need that? Stefan said it before. In terms of harmonized track access charging, we see a lot of differences in the height of the costs and what pricing schemes do they use. The database from RINF considers infrastructure parameters and also the vehicle compatibility parameters. So if you try to plan a train path from country A to country B, you have to consider or take into account, can I access the infrastructure from from the country B with my vehicles? Does it fit? Is it compatible? In terms of roads, this is not a problem. We just track them travel from A to B. Railways, we have to consider that. Another issue is how to calculate the train path. How are the paths allocated? How is the charging scheme? Who is responsible? What authority is responsible? And what do I have to do to calculate the train path? How high are the costs? Are they at the same level from both countries? Just imagine if we move to 4 or 5 countries. We have to consider 4 or 5 different pricing schemes to calculate the train path. Mm-hmm. This database is a very good tool to see and compare how high are the costs, what pricing schemes do they use, and where do I have to look for the network statements, for example. And again, this tool is used for the Commission. And in terms of this, it has the advantage that is used at least by the operator and complies with the guidelines.
Yeah. So this seems to be very interesting for infrastructure managers and operators to use for more information. Yes. Yeah. I see that the question is coming in for you. It's from Matthias Landgraaf. He asked, are monitoring systems along the infrastructure required, or can they contribute to the evaluation, calculation, and processing of track access charges?
Well, very good and this interesting question. When you're talking about condition monitoring, as I said before, we need a more sophisticated approach to calculate what is the impact of such vehicles on my infrastructure. How do they maybe destroy, or how much do they contribute to the deterioration of my infrastructure? Some vehicles are better, the others are not so good. So how is the impact? And if we use monitoring devices along the infrastructure, a couple of them, we can assess the actual impact of each vehicle and of each train and charge it like this. Therefore.
Thank you. If you have any more questions for Ivan, please send them in, and Ivan also will come back to the discussion at the end. Thank you very much for your explanation, and let's go to the next speaker, Justina Udenko. She's head of Latvian Railways charging body. Welcome, Justina. In the past, you have done research on Latvian company's competitiveness in external markets at Riga Technical University. In your study, you have covered rail freight competitiveness. What are the main factors affecting rail freight competitiveness?
Hello, Marika. Thank you very much for hosting instead of me.
Welcome.
This will be an introduction to Track Access Charge Summit home in Riga in autumn. So yes, it was a part of state research program where I was responsible for common reserve methodology and the rail freight sector, as rail freight sector is a very important part of Latvian economy. As a first step, can you please deliver a slide to our webinar participants?
The first slide, can we show them? Yeah.
So
Thanks.
as a first step, we have investigated Porter Diamond model's competitive factors. And this model consists of 3 factor groups. And all these 6 factors are considered to be related also for rail freight. And these 6 factors is company and rivalry on the market, the development of the supporting and related sectors, so-called clusters, production factors, demand, government activities, and possible opportunity. This is innovation processes. Then later we compare Latvian rail freight sector competitive advantages with the rival transport corridors and faced up a lot of disadvantages. And therefore we went to a deeper analysis in order to find causes of it and bring out a set of root factors. And some of them were objective and it's not possible to be changed, like mining places, geography, and also historical locations, etc. But some had a personal manner and could be affected by policymakers. And those are situations on labor and capital markets, bureaucracy, and all other things we already know. So further, we find out that these personal reasons arise from cultural peculiarities, but I think that this is not today's topic. And now we can see on the slide that there are a huge number of factors that affect rail freight competitiveness, and 3 of these factors groups are clearly related to track access charges. Those are production factors that affects network costs, then demand that specify unit costs, and government as a precondition to subsidies that reducing track access charges. All these through groups of factors have their specifics and usually are not affected by infrastructure manager. And this is what I underlined in my book, Track Access Charges and Freight Transportation. But all other factors affects market ability to pay. And this may be also an answer to Stefan's questions why track access charges differs from country to country.
Mm-hmm. So I'm also wondering, how do you deal with these track access charges in your country, in Latvia?
So now we are elaborating a new business model that address all these competitive advantages factors, where track access charges is a huge of important, but is only one of. And as I told, we are in the process and really don't know how successful the outcome will be. But from my observations, to be well placed for competitive track access charges, we need to create not track access charges schemes, but more comprehensive transport policies that includes all preconditions for lower and elastic track access charges. And I proposed in my study to use a specific model. This in the slide it was seen. It is Kim and Malbon Blue Ocean model for this, but it is only one of the possible.
I see there are also questions coming in from the audience. Do you have knowledge about how other Eastern European countries are dealing with this?
I hope that my understanding of the situation is a belief of most of Eastern European infrastructure managers. We need a transition time to break shaming of infrastructure managers or regulatory bodies or competent authority and their use. We need to develop new cluster formations to obtain network effects. And now in the Eastern European country, we are on the way on it. So this is the main objection at the moment.
Thank you. You also refer to the book that you recently published. In this book, you emphasize that there are unclear concepts, mutual contradictions, and imperfection in methodologies used in the field of track access charges. Can you explain why this is and what should be done to have more harmonization?
Yes, having contradictions and imperfections is a normal process in transition period. And we can go forward with small or big steps, and we are doing so, having industry communication on Prime platform in this Track Access Charge Summit, also in some informal groups. So in my Track Access Charge Summit presentation, I'd like to propose one of these steps, which was already addressed by Ivan. And I also prepared one slide for this. Can you please deliver it to webinar participants?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you know, there is a common practice to compare track access charges among countries by using track access charge level to some standardized unit. For example, last time Stefan have been used freight train kilometers for 1,000 ton heavy train. And this is very tricky because, in fact, there is no such a track parameters used at the moment by infrastructure manager. Usually, infrastructure managers use set of parameters, like train kilometers, ton kilometers, and they're combined in a very huge set of parameters used. And that is why such benchmarks may have misunderstanding by users, especially by regulatory bodies and ministries. And I will talk in details about this in my autumn presentation. But today, I only want to stress that the incoherence of train parameters used has harmful influence when developing, especially through tariffs, for example, for international freight or passenger trains. This is because the user must be familiar with an enormous amount of information. You can see on the slide how many parameters it was necessary to input in order to compare set of states. So the same set of parameters should be used to understand should be used and know in advance to understand and to assess international rail freight or passenger tariffs to the final user. And here is definitely a room for improvements. And we have to think about cooperation in relation to charging systems on more than one network. In my point of view, this is more important than going deeper and deeper into the details of the costs that incurred as a result of operating the train service. So this is the point I would raise in the autumn session.
Thank you very much. Earlier, I've also had an interview with Monica Heiming of European Infrastructure Managers, and I was wondering about the COVID-19 crisis. She said something about discussion of that's been going on about lowering track access charges to help the railway industry in this crisis. Would like to show you the interview, a short clip, and then we can discuss about it. Yeah.
And what can be done, for example, to face liquidity problems? Because you have, of course, track access charges, you have cost for energy. What can be done?
So infrastructure managers cannot dump all the charges. So we have been speaking with the European Commission on that. We have been actively reaching out to them. That's quite important. So we have been looking in from the legal angle into what can be done. And we agreed with the Commission that everything that's in the regulation is very difficult to suddenly stop being applied. So a regulation is a piece of law. So we cannot charge direct costs below direct charges, for example. That's quite difficult. Or you need an exemption or a special rule for that. On the more national charges, such as parking or cancellation fees, parking or reservation fees, several of our members, or actually quite a lot of them, don't apply them or have suspended them.
And what are the differences between countries of helping the railway operators?
I don't have the entire overview, so DG Move has done an overview, but for the moment we're looking into a harmonized approach also on Prime, the platform for rail infrastructure managers, so that we have a harmonized approach to deferral of truck access charges payments. That's one thing, so we cannot dump them, but we can defer the payments. And we can decide, actually, as the members decide with their respective regulator and the Ministry of Transport to actually no more charge cancellation fees. And that is important. Some of the operators have actually not cancelled their tracks. So they should do so. Otherwise, they continue to be charged for these trucks. So some of the trucks, I mean, you only get paid for you only pay for the trucks you're using. Actually, if you don't use them, you should cancel them, and some have not done.
And you.
So this was a quite interesting statement from Monica Heiming of AEM. Justina, what do you think about the view of Monica on the COVID-19 crisis and the idea of lowering track access charges? What is your opinion about that?
As a charging body, I also faced some requests about track access charges. And I can totally agree with the reservation cancellation charge postponing or at least banning on this time. I'm not sure about some offers coming from market like cancellation of penalties for payments. I'm not sure that this is the case. It should be investigated in each case from RU to RU, or maybe from market segment to market segment. So, in my mind, we have to communicate with our RUs and to see how the situation is developed in our country, and each IM should consider their own factors. And we have not to develop some harmonized rules in European Union. We did so. We communicate with infrastructure manager and also with our RUs. We did not find any room to improve something in our track access charge systems. But I understand that some IMs has.
You understand the discussion, yeah. Stefan or Ivan, do you want to respond to this?
Yeah, I would like to respond. Of course, now in that situation, there are a lot of industries that are under pressure financially. Lowering the track access charge will, of course, have the railway undertakings for the train operation services. On the other hand, we talk about a public subsidy of the railway sector. Because if you reduce track access charges, there will be less income at the infrastructure manager side. So, and somebody will have to take care of these unpaid costs. So in the end, of course, I think, as Justina said, there will be a discussion necessary how to help the railway sector financially through this crisis. But I'm not sure if track access charges are the right instrument for that. We cannot break up the direct cost principle. Of course, we could talk about the markups for one or the other market segments, but how to install that with all the processes that we have before we have set up a charging scheme into place. I think it should be other tools to be used here.
And as also Monica Heiming said, if you change now the legislation for COVID, then you also have to change it back afterwards. It will be a big hassle.
I think that is the wrong way.
Yeah.
There must be financial aid, of course, but we already, when you see it from the infrastructure manager side perspective, They already will have problems now as there are much less trains running on their networks. So they will have a reduced income already now, but they will not have a too reduced cost system because, a lot of costs are fixed costs. So in the end, that will give a demand for support, of course, on the infrastructure side as well as on the train operation side, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And as Justina said, I'm also quite convinced that this will be a decision from country to country, and it's not necessary for European rules here in this topic, in my eyes.
Justina, how is your country dealing with the COVID crisis at this moment? How is it? Everything's going with the railways. Is everything running?
Yes, it will be so interesting, but virus has positive impact in our country because we have improved all these digital things in infrastructure, in management, and also we have improved our cross-bordering procedures. This is also like one of the positive moments. As our country mostly deal with the freight and PCO segment, so I don't see that we have some huge impact on virus on our.
Now that's very positive. I see that the question is coming in. It's for Stefan. Do you think that the more sophisticated computer-based simulation approach, similar to the one used in Switzerland, would be adopted by other countries in the future? And if so, what would be the difficulties to be overcome?
From my perspective, of course, I would like to have other countries following the process. You see, or the audience will also see that Justina and I have probably a different view on these topics. I'm coming from the engineering side, and I think that we have to improve the direct cost issue because this is a necessary link that we need for the cost optimization in the railway system technology. We are always talking about that. If you split that, we have split it to a certain part in technical way. We have the railway or the railway vehicle on the one side and the infrastructure, the track on the other side. There is a need for technical optimization, and this should be done, of course, on a cost basis. So we will not make improvement in technology that cannot help us in the cost topic. So I think this is simply a need that we come up with a sustainable technology for the future. The challenges for a scheme like we have in Switzerland is, of course, a data issue on the vehicles, but I can tell everybody that this problem can be solved easily, especially with our new tools in digitalization. This is not the challenge. The challenge might be that we have to change the mind that the calculation of a track access charge should be simple. In my eyes, this is not the task. If for the user, it must be a simple way to get the price. This can be done with different platforms, like they have it in Switzerland. But in the end, we need a scheme that gives the right economic incentives to do the right thing. And of course, I also hope that we will probably with that Shift to Rail initiative that we started with the universal cost model for running gear, that is prolonged now in the next gear project, that we can come up with a methodology that is accepted throughout the community, that this is the technology link, and therefore it is always also a cost link, and it would be very helpful. And I just want to mention again, this is not a thing that Switzerland did on its own, or was the only country that did that. This is implemented in the UK as well, and it is mentioned in detail in the implementation regulation 909 from 2015 as well, that this could be an option for countries that have the data and the technological boundary condition to do it.
Justina, if you look at the Swiss model, would this be applicable in Eastern Europe, or what do you think? Or is the situation different?
No, it's different for a 1520 network, for sure. And this is also some kind of peculiarities that we need to consider when we apply it to freight market, because freight market has volatility, and that's why it is not possible to apply one period data to another period. It's very complicated process. I would say that we have to use this engineering approach to have to understand optimal costs, not the direct cost to be applied to customers. So, but it is very useful to see this optimal cost, which is like an aim to achieve for infrastructure manager.
Thank you very much. With this last question, I would like to end today's webinar, and I would like to thank you, the experts, for participating and answering all the questions and giving the explanations about this sometimes complicated topic. It made it very interesting. I also like to thank the audience for watching today, and I want to thank the crew here in the studio for making this webinar possible. Later today you will receive a replay link through your email, so you can watch the video back. We hope to continue the session with you on the 14th and 15th of October in Riga at the Track Access Charges Summit. And you can find more information about it on trackaccesscharges.com. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.